So probably I should start. So we should start the session. So welcome everyone. So our first talk is from Andrew McWilliams. He's a clinical research fellow and PhD student in Stephen Fleming's Metacognition group at the Wellcome Center for Human Neuroimaging at University College London, and he's also with the Mental Health Law and Ethics Research Group at King's College London. And he's also a specialist registrar in child and adolescent psychiatry at Great Ormond Street Hospital for Children, known as GOSH. Okay, so Andrew, you can start. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm very excited to talk to you today about our project where we've gamified a measure of metacognition and used it in a crowdsourcing study across the lifespan. I hope you can't see my shirt, it's a bit crumpled, but my iron broke last night, so I'm hoping that's not coming across on web camera with a bit of luck. So what is, I can't move through the slides. Let me just stop sharing. I might have to come out again. Just try and share a different view. Try this one. That's better. Great, fantastic. So what is metacognition and why is it important? Well, I think the modern research into metacognition really began in 1979 with Flavel, and one way of viewing metacognition is it's our own ability to think about our own thought processes, or our thinking about our own cognition, if you like. And a lot of the study deals with this idea of confidence. So people's ability to report their own confidence about their performance on a task, their own self-confidence. And I quite like this as a notion because it's got, I think, a great deal of translational potential to real-world problems, such as theories of mental illness, such as whether or not people are able to reflect on their own mental health and have insight into their own mental health. And indeed, people's capacity or ability to make authentic decisions for themselves. In order to derive behavioral parameters, I think what we're interested in is trying to characterize whether an experimental participant can discriminate whether they have answered correctly or incorrectly on a cognitive task through their use of confidence ratings. So these two plots here show in the upper and lower panels two imaginary participants who are performing a task and then being asked to make a confidence rating about the task. And in each of the two panels, the red distribution is their confidence ratings when they were incorrect at the task, and the blue distribution is the confidence ratings they gave when they were correct at the task. And as you can see in the two participants, if the distributions of the confidence ratings are spread further apart, then this means they're better metacognitively at making judgments about their performance than a person whose distributions of confidence ratings are more overlapping. But in measuring, in trying to derive behavioral measures of metacognition, there are a few problems we need to overcome. So one is that people's actual performance on the first order task, if you like, that they're being asked to comment on, this actually confounds their metacognition measures, because people who perform well on the first order task tend to know they're performing well, whereas people who are performing poorly don't tend to know. I'm just going to reach to a term from signal detection theory here, where how well someone can discriminate signal and noise is referred to as the D prime there, so the discrimination. The second problem for behavioral measures is people's general propensity to be self-confident or general propensity to be underconfident. And a self-confident or an underconfident person could still be metacognitively discriminating well within that level of self-confidence. So this metacognitive bias, as we call it, towards being either having a low general confidence or a high general confidence also needs to be teased out. And part of the way that researchers have dealt with this is by reaching to an extended version of signal detection therapy, to a type 2 signal detection approach, where we're actually looking at people's how the confidence ratings are discriminating the correct and incorrect responses. So it's a second order level. And we call this, the parameter derived from this, the meta D prime. And then if we actually divide this by people's first order task performance, their D prime, then that can allow us to produce a sensitivity of confidence given a certain level of task performance. And we call this meta D prime over D prime, or their M ratio, we call that their metacognitive efficiency. But there are practical problems now introduced to measuring metacognition, because these kind of models actually require very high numbers of trials in order to generate robust parameters. And this, of course, means that the tasks get very boring very quickly. And lots of the kinds of people we might want to study, they might have low concentration or might not be that interested in taking part in your task. So our solution really was to try to make a gamified environment that people could do these metacognitive tasks in a friendly and engaging way. And in fact, to do this on the web, so we can, this was all before the coronavirus crisis happened, but this has allowed us to take our study out even when we're not delivering it in person. And this hopefully is making it usable and accessible to a wide range of groups of people. So our gamified measurement of metacognition is called Metacogmission, and it's set on an alien planet which you're exploring in a gamified environment. And we've worked with a technology firm in London called Damfine to achieve this. Importantly, we've taken prototypes of metacognition to 2 public engagement events, one at the Tate Modern in London and one at Latitude Music Festival in the southeast of England. And we've gathered feedback, qualitative feedback from over 400 people about prototype versions, and then work closely with mental health service users advisor group, the McPin Foundation, to make sure our final task is accessible and intuitive to all sorts of people. So I'll just take you very quickly through what it actually looks like when you're doing metacognition. So you enter into our gamified, as I said, alien world set on a planet, and you scroll right and left through the screen and find different tasks to complete. So one of them here, memory task, ancient artifacts, it's called. And this takes you into really quite a standard metacognitive task. So with initially a 2 alternative forced choice task where you're presented with 3 memory stimuli that you're asked to memorize before being shown 2, and you have to say which one is the one you've already seen rather than the novel stimulus. And then for each trial, there's a slider presented where the person needs to say how confident they are about that individual trial before going on to the next memorization set. So what's actually happened here is we've staircased the task performance. So in order to try to control the quality of our data, we try to keep the D prime relatively stable, and we try to hold their task performance accuracy at 70 to 72% by increasing the number of stimuli in the set when they've got the answer correct on 2 consecutive occasions, and decreasing it by 1 when they get the answer wrong. So then they would have to perform on this task and give another trial rating for this. So I'll just show you some different stimuli sets we've got. We've got some fish. My favorite ones is the alien plants, which I think are quite nice. And then the second mission involved is the perceptual mission. So it's again, really, it's a relatively standard psychophysical task put into a slightly more attractive format. So these are our peculiar fruit, and people are asked whether or not there are more red or more blue dots on the screen, and to say whether there were more red fruit or more blue fruit, as you can see here. And then again, to give a confidence rating trial by trial about that. So ultimately, the project I'm going to talk to you about today briefly was one where we decided to check the measurement properties and create a norming sample, which we hope to use in future studies, via the crowdsourcing web delivery science site, Prolific, which is now building up, I think, quite a following for doing these kinds of experiments. We pre-registered on Open Science. And the 2 questions we were interested in, one was domain generality. So it's still an open question whether or not metacognition operates across cognitive domains, or whether or not each cognitive domain has its own metacognitive component operating within it, or indeed if it's a combination of the 2, which might well be the case. And also the trajectory of metacognition across the lifespan. So although we know how memory and other cognitive processes change through life, there's actually conflicting evidence about metacognition, whether or not it decays into older age, or in fact, whether or not it might be preserved, possibly by the protective effects of experience through life. So we set up our study using 6 adult age groups there, with decades starting at 18 years, going up to our oldest group is 68 years and over, aiming to get 50 participants in each one. And Prolific, we're a British group, and Prolific actually is mainly United Kingdom participants. This is just a screenshot off their site. So this was attractive for us to use them rather than maybe some of the United States-based crowdsourcing sites. And I'm going to talk to you about some preliminary results. We've made some exclusions from our data, but we'll probably need to make a few more. So these results are only preliminary at the moment. Currently, we've got 304 subjects, which is a nice set. And they've undertaken 100 memory trials and 100 perception trials in 5 mini blocks of 20 trials. So we've actually got over 30,000 trials in each domain. And then we used Steve Fleming's metacognitive toolbox to derive single subject fits. And I'll just talk you through the results very briefly. So firstly, if we look at people's D primes, so their task performance and their age, we would hope this was relatively stable across all our groups. So we've got perception there on the left, and you can see throughout the life course, it's relatively stable. And I've done an ANOVA, and that's the p-value you've got at the bottom, which isn't reaching significance. And similarly in the memory, the D prime is relatively stable across the life course as well. So that's showing that our staircase is working well. Then if you look at people's metacognitive bias, so this is their general propensity to give very confident or very underconfident ratings. So perception on the left. So across the life course there, we've got a significant actually effect of this kind of U shape that we see there, where people's confidence goes from generally high earlier in life, and in middle age, their confidence has gone down lower, and then seems to be picking up again in older age. And we actually see a similar pattern with memory. And again, these are the p-values for ANOVAs here. Then people's metacognitive efficiency compared to their age. So looking on the left here with perception, we can see it's certainly relatively stable. So the ANOVA didn't reach a significant level. I mean, if anything, it seems that their M ratio actually, there's a trend, if you like, towards the M ratio increasing through life, and the same on the right for memory. So this actually gives us reasonable evidence right now that metacognition doesn't decay with age. And then my final slide of results. So looking at the domain generality question about metacognition. So on the left here, looking at people's metacognitive bias, so their tendency to be generally confident or underconfident. So people's perceptual bias and their memory bias actually correlates quite strongly. So this is their Pearson R here. And then, interestingly, people's metacognitive efficiency as well, that's also correlating quite strongly between memory and perception, giving us good evidence that maybe there is a significant domain generality effect in metacognition. So my final slide, conclusions and future directions. So we've managed to produce a measure which seems fun and engaging, collected analyzable data. We found that our first order task performance was stable with age and highly correlated across domains. Metacognitive bias became more negative into middle age and was also highly correlated across domains. And metacognitive efficiency didn't clearly diminish and was highly correlated. We've got a nice corpus of adults for using as a control group, and we're currently now measuring metacognition in Alzheimer's and in Parkinson's disease using it. And our future plan will be to extend downwards in age to children in health and in neuropsychiatric illness. So really, it's a big thank you out to all my supervisors, to everyone in the lab who've been so supportive. The most important person to thank is Hannah Bibby, who was a master's student who worked very closely with me on this and has been an absolute lifesaver on the project. So really big thanks to her. There's my email address, and I'd be really happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. It was great, very clear, very, very clear. Thank you, very well done. So anyone, if there are any questions, please type away in the Q&A box. While people are typing their questions, I can do a quick one. So in terms of there's any gender effects, so did you try to control for gender or education or such things?
The gender. So I've recorded gender, but I haven't looked at it yet, actually. So that is something that we can report on, but I haven't actually looked into that yet.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at your, yeah, I mean, some of the plots that you were showing me, so the p-values that you were reporting were actually, so are they corrected? So you have done quite a few, yeah. So are they corrected p-values that for now you say it's preliminary results, so you probably are still analyzing more data sets?
Yeah, so they're not, so I've excluded participants who, well, I actually only needed to exclude one whole participant. They gave a maximum confidence rating for every single perceptual trial. So they're excluded from the data. I've also excluded trials where people took longer than it was 30 seconds actually to respond. And then in terms of actually the p-values themselves, though, aren't corrected. They were just an alpha set at 0.05. So yeah, that'll be something I need to look into, certainly.
Yeah, because some of the p-values that you had were pretty close to 0.05, so they may push to the other anyway. So,
yeah.
But probably there may be some gender effects. So if you control for that, which is pretty straightforward, you might see, yeah, more pronounced p-values and statistical thresholds. So we have quite a few questions coming in. So we don't have time, but we'll, if you can quickly respond to them. So first one is, do you have any intuitions for the reason behind the U-shaped confidence age relationship?
So I think that's really interesting. I think the first question was to think about who the participants actually are. So that's an important consideration, is through the lifespan, are these the same participants at different age points? Or are different kinds of people attracted to registering on this website to Prolific? So I think that's something just to think about. I think there is an interesting idea that actually experience brings about it some kinds of change through life. But whether or not at the end, then in the very older ages, there starts to be a process of decay instead, which is what actually makes the U-shaped curve, if you see what I mean. So I think there could be a few different things going on.
Yeah, that's great. Actually, there are quite a few questions coming for you. There are two more, but actually we are behind our schedule. So you can see these questions and you can see, you can type your answer there.
Okay, brilliant.
So if you like to, I mean, respond by typing the answers, that would be great. Okay. Sorry for this, we don't have that much time left, so we have to move on. Thanks a lot again, Andre. It was very exciting.
Thank you.
So thanks a lot. Now we next move on to our next speaker.